Thank you, Barbara. You're awesome.
You're awesome too. And today is November the 18th. You know, it's been an interesting month. I've shed tears, I've smiled, I've created hope. I've been aware that we are not all at peace on the planet. And then I got hope again when I watched Frank Borman in his return from the moon. And he said, as he was filming The Dark Side of the Moon, that was almost boring. All they have are craters and darkness. But then when I went around from the dark side of the moon and I saw Earth rise. And when I saw Earth rise, I had the hope that we are one planet. I didn't see any wars. I didn't see any borders. I only saw water and brown earth. And he said at the end of his movie, and if you haven't seen Earth Rise, R-I-S-E, go to YouTube and watch that 30 minutes. It will inspire you to love our planet again. It will inspire you to know that the United Nations Association and the United Nations itself are as important today as they were when they were founded over, well, I don't know how many years ago, because now we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the human rights. And I think the UN is 78 now. As you look at the UN and you look at the people on this call, we are the people that I always tell everyone, we were meant to be here now. We are the solutions, we are the hope, and we are the energy that the world needs. And so I thank each of you for joining us. We're going to stick to the agenda pretty closely today, and I welcome each of you. I've had a chance to talk to Sylvia Whitlock. We have some notable people today. Sylvia Whitlock was the reason I became a Rotarian. She was the Duarte president before women were allowed. And then they said to her, Sylvia, said, you can't be at this meeting. You're a woman. This is a Rotary Club meeting. And she said, yes, I'm the president of my Rotary. Well, that was it. And what did she do? She became the ex-Duarte Club, but she never gave up. And so we have women in Rotary. And if you look at our screen today, you'll see Tom Carlisi. Raise your hand, Tom. Tom is from Columbus, Ohio, a very active peacemaker. And Shab, raise your hand, Shab. Shab comes in from Inland Empire, who also is a peacemaker. And right before me was Barry Simon, who's going to tell you about a concert he's going to have. And then Judith Harris before Barry. Judith Harris has made so many people happy because she's helped them become chapters, like Dr. Gupta. The Long Beach chapter would have not been the power it is today if it wouldn't have been for Dr. Gupta and Judith. And there's so many of you. I hold you in my prayers. I hold you in my thankfulness. And I thank you for being here today. So with that, we're going to get started. Now, I hope, and I know you did, you all read the minutes because they were attached to the agenda. And the minutes have three things that I really want you to pay attention to. These minutes were for July 22nd, 2023, the last annual sort of global meeting that we had for our chapter. Again, I repeat, we go from the tip of Westlake to the tip of San Luis Obispo. We have a large territory for my UNA, but the UNA Southern California division even extends us into San Diego. So from the border of San Diego to San Luis Obispo, that's us. And I see Mel's hand up.
Can we share the minutes?
She's not on to do that. Mel, do you have the minutes in front of you?
I don't.
Mm.
But it's not essential. It's just helpful if we had them.
I know if Crystal got on, we would be sharing them. But I have, well, let me just repeat three things that I found. I read them again, and they are attached to the invitation to this meeting, okay? There were three things that I thought were really important. One, and you remember me saying it last time, read the Charter of the United Nations. The first page of the minutes shows you the link to read the Charter to avoid the scourge of war. The second thing that really came from Mel Boynton, who said, advocacy website tells you the things that we need to tell Congress and how we can keep the UN strong. So that was important, and that was in number D. Jenny Hatfield talked about the 100th anniversary of the Equal Rights Amendment. In 2023, it marks the ERA's 100th anniversary. And last but not least, Nancy Martin talked about the Human Rights Affinity Group. And as I mentioned earlier, the human rights are in their 78th year, 75th year, the United Nations in the 78th year. And with that, have you had a chance to read the minutes? Let me just ask that. If you have, do we have somebody who can make a motion to approve the minutes? And if you haven't read them, I can postpone it to next meeting. Hearing nothing, would somebody like to motion that we approve the minutes as Crystal typed them for us?
This is David Tuckman. I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, David Tuckman. And this is being recorded, so we will get this in the minutes, and I need a second.
I second. Judith Harris.
Thanks, Judith. And with that, is there any discussion about the July 22-23 minutes? Hearing none, I ask you to approve the minutes. And raise your hand if you approve the minutes. Looks like we have most of our members approving the minutes. God bless you and thank you. Okay, the minutes are approved. I see a hand up, Barry. No, Barry didn't have his hand up. Okay, ready to go.
That was just my vote for approving the minutes.
Oh, thank you very much, Barry. Barry keeps me on my toes, let me tell you. You may not know that, but he is quite a resource. If you ever have a question about UNA, don't hesitate to call Barry. All right, officer reports. I don't see Sid. Sid, are you on? Okay, we'll put that on PS. We'll do that later. Programs, we'll have it not available. Chapter development. This is amazing. You know, I guess it's because of Thanksgiving. A lot of people aren't here today. But Mel, would you like to give us a report on advocacy? You're sitting right there with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
Sure. Would you allow me to share my screen, please?
The answer is, of course.
Okay. Great. Then I will do that right now.
If you have it open, you just click on share screen.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay. We've had an update to our advocacy website, and here it's being shared with you. Everyone can see it?
Yes. It looks
Okay,
great.
good. And if you scroll down, we've got UNESCO funding. We're right in the middle of the budget cycle. So if you're doing things on Zoom, share this advocacy page at unausa.org. And also, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing we can do for advocacy. Make sure you include it in your meetings. The big development this week in the UN, as far as I'm concerned, is that the United States did not object to they abstained in the Security Council on a sustained pause, calling for a sustained pause in the Israel-Gaza Hamas war. So that's something some of your members may not know. It's starting to percolate through the news. It was on the NewsHour last night, and we're hoping that conflict will come to a conclusion and we'll have hostages released soon. Did you want me to talk about Bertle?
Yes, since you have the screen, I would like that. You may know that Bertle was the Coachella Valley president of his chapter and had some mishaps and has passed. And so we have somebody who is going to take his place, but I'd like Mel, he was in your chapter, wasn't he, of the UNA?
Yeah, he started in our chapter and was president of our chapter for a couple of years. And he studied at Pomona College. He studied Russian and French at Pomona College. and that helped him when he worked in Vietnam. He worked for Save the Children in the 90s, and he was head of the United Nations program on HIV/AIDS. UNAIDS is the abbreviation they use. Office in New York. That was during the early 2000s. And he appeared on Democracy Now! And at many other events commemorating and celebrating the quite successful progress on UNAIDS. And of course, we in the United States with PEPFAR participated in that, and it's at risk of not being funded. So when you talk to your legislators, tell them about PEPFAR and that we had a leader in our division of UNA that was head of that agency in his time. He died on October 1st. These pictures, that was Bertel on the left side here with the "We will not let hate win." That was at Augustin, his favorite French restaurant in Saigon, Vietnam.
Oh, boy.
In the upper right-hand corner, classic Bertel smile with his mom.
Mm.
And some of you may have been at the post-2015 agenda meeting that we had in Whittier in 2014, I think it was. And Bertel's here holding the portfolio, and some of the student interns we had. So he was a active member for probably 10 years. And toward the end, he served on the national board. So we're very proud of Bertel, and we're sorry he passed. As far as I know, there's been no memorial service announced.
I'm with you. He was such a light, and he had so much background. We were so honored to have him serve as long as he did in Coachella Valley. Is there anybody else on this call who'd like to honor Bertel?
I knew Bertel socially as well as through UNA. He had a great sense of humor, enjoyed good food, and I knew him through UNA, a more serious side of him, but he's just a gentleman, just a caring, loving, wonderful person. And I know he worked well with students, and he was very dedicated. And I'm missing him a lot.
He had a life, his life was well lived.
Yes.
I can remember him saying, I just want to keep going. I just want to keep going, keep doing things because I know I'm needed. And he was a light and just a wonderful man. Barry?
Yeah, Bertel, just to agree with the piggyback on what everybody said, Bertel was a sweet, great fellow, committed to the elimination of AIDS as an issue on the planet, and worked so hard to accomplish that. He was a great gift from the Pomona Valley chapter to Coachella Valley, and he worked to transform or transition the chapter from its initial leadership to bring in some leaders that are still there. And just as a bit of an update, he brought in people that were committed, and some of those people are actively looking to revitalize the chapter in his absence and carry it on strongly. And just as a brief comment, he served as a regional representative, as many of you know. He unfortunately, due to health reasons, and he had a number of health reasons the past year and a half prior to his passing, but he did his best to carry on, but he eventually had to resign that position. And later on today, when I give a little bit of a comment about the National Council, I will discuss how regional rep positions are being looked at going forward.
That might just
May he rest in peace.
Yeah, may he rest in peace, and God bless him. And God bless him for giving us his spirit while he was here and working so hard for your chapter, Mel. amazing the things that I have heard that he has done, from being president to working internationally. He was an international spokesperson for the UNA for sure. Barry, I'm going to go to you now because it looks like several of the people I expected to be are probably on holiday. Would you give us a regional rep report and tell a little bit about what you are, please, as a regional rep?
Yes, and I just got a note from our treasurer. Unfortunately, I can't make it to the meeting today because I'm taking his daughter to an appointment. He'll email the board and Barbara with the latest treasury info when he's back in tonight. So that will get, I guess, somehow or other entered into the minutes so that we can be aware of the treasury, which he has kindly taken over and not able to be with us today. As far as any bit of a report from the National Council, next Tuesday, the 21st, is the next National Council meeting. I am chair or co-chair of the membership committee on the National Council. I'll be serving for another year or two on the National Council. The most important thing that I want to share is Bert's passing and the vacancy that resulted on as a regional rep for our region, and other regions that didn't have a full complement of regional reps, has had the nominating committee of the National Council, which I also serve on, look at how to approach a midterm or a replacement, a replacement. And so the way it's being proposed, this is not official yet, the way it's being proposed is that if there is less than a year remaining in a term and somebody is elected by agreement of the chapters in that region that submit names to the region for the region to select a replacement, if that replacement serves less than 1 year as it's in filling out that term, they would then be available for a total of 3 two-year terms. So they could serve 6+ years. If their replacement is for more than a year duration, then they can serve 2 additional terms of 4 years. So that's how it's being proposed. And if anybody has any particular questions about that, for me to maybe clarify it a little better, happy to. But that's how it's being proposed, and will perhaps be. It's also being looked at by the Policies and Procedures Committee of the National Council. And so there's various chains of command for it to pass through before it's actually approved in this and adjusting the bylaws. If your chapter has not, just a couple of things from National, and then I'll pass the torch back to Barbara. If your chapter has not done its 990N, which is a short form 990, I don't know that any chapter raises more than $20,000 or whatever the requirement is. So it's just a very simple short form. It doesn't take more than 5 minutes to complete. It can be a little difficult to find it, but your chapter needs to have completed that by now for 2022. If you have not, you should do that immediately. Otherwise, you could be at risk of losing your chapter's tax favored status. And it could also reflect and cause some problems nationally. So you want to make sure you complete your tax reporting on a timely basis. And if you have not signed off on and submitted your bylaws to National yet, you want to do that as well. So that's what I have to say from National.
Well, I appreciate that. And I also appreciate National considering that 1 year kind of window, because it allows our replacement that we have proposed, David Rice, to serve for 6 years. If I don't know what Bertle's term is, I wish I knew that. And so I don't know if he had a year left, but I think he did, because he was the last nominee for regional rep, right?
Yeah, basically he would have resigned with, or the vacancy would be less than a year. He'd be up for election or re-election now. So I would assert that Dave would have the opportunity to have 3 full terms, to be elected, hypothetically, if that's the nominee, to be elected today, to fill out that next 6 months, because the term actually goes from June to June to June. And so he'd be able to serve that out and still be available for 3 more terms if he wants to run for that 3rd term. It's not a requirement, and somebody could run against him in the future. But in some regions, we're very blessed in Southern California. We have 3 regional reps, so a vacancy didn't cause a real loss of communication between the region, if you will, and national. Some regions only have 1 regional rep, and there has been some vacancies. So some regions have had no representation technically at the national level. So we want to try to resolve that. So
Thank you. And so with that, any ask questions about regional reps? They have quite a big job. They get a stipend, which isn't much to cover their travel and their hotel, but they do have a commitment, and that commitment is to be present at the meetings in person. And did you have a Zoom meeting recently?
for the National Council,
Yeah.
the next National Council Zoom meeting is this coming Tuesday, but all chapters are welcome also at the National Leadership Zoom call, which is a monthly call that they do for all chapter leaders, whether the presidents or their appointee or appointees, to attend that national leadership call. And it's lots of good information.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Judith and Mel. So
Yeah.
whatever kudos you gave me earlier is because of Judith and Mel's whispering in my ear.
Oh, I know, but you're still great.
Thank you.
Welcome. And this is an important time for us because we're going to have elections today, and Bianca has been working really hard. But I'm going to go to chapter reports. I'm going to really move right through this because Peter FIEKOWSKY is worth a whole time to listen to him. So I'm going to go to which chapters are here today. Judith, I know you're here. Mel's going to do the chapter for him. David, I have a special. I told David if he goes to Sylvia's event at the Nixon Library, I'm going to bring him a case of something. This was the first one today to give me this week to give me a report, actual report. Come on, guys. David, if David can do it, as busy as he is with his dog and his wife and his mother-in-law and his 2 jobs, you all can do it too. So if you didn't get your report in, we'll put it in the minutes as you give it to us today. So don't worry. David, let's start with you since I am so proud of you. David, what chapter are you representing, and are you still president?
Yes, I'm representing San Fernando Valley chapter. I'm chapter president. Our jurisdiction goes from the far end, Burbank, North Highwood, Woodland Hills, North Hills, West Hills, Canoga Park, Studio City, Lake Forest. Other end is Northridge. Beyond that, Chatsworth, Calabasas, Gura Hills. On the other far end, it goes back to Lake Elizabeth, and it stops right past Lancaster and Magic Mountain. So jurisdiction covers a big, long range. So we're very happy to be America's first chapter and to be a very large jurisdiction as well.
All right, you want to give
As
us
chapter
give
president,
us 3 minutes of report. Can you do that?
I'll be happy to. The San Fernando Valley chapter takes great pride in reflecting on our achievements over the past year, spanning from our dedication to animal and human rights to our unwavering support for the UN system. Our efforts have been diverse and impactful, covering a wide array of crucial global issues. Throughout the year, our chapter spearheaded a program in collaboration with the esteemed Voice of America journalist, Sir Juan Cajo, delivering or delving into the complexities of the war in Ukraine, the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria, and aiming to shed light on these critical issues and events. Additionally, we hosted a compelling speaking panel focusing on the rights of Iranian women and the Women Life Freedom Movement. We held a program with the World Food Program in November of last year, just prior to Thanksgiving, bringing home to those fortunate to have food security the plight of those who do not. It was entitled Food Insecurity, How We Are Meeting the Challenge. We also had the privilege of contributing performances to the Peace Concert and actively participating in significant events such as UN Day and the Robert Mueller Peace Prize ceremony.
Wow.
Looking forward, there's more. Looking forward, we are actively engaged in preparing a program featuring speakers discussing the plight of Ukraine refugees, This forthcoming event, scheduled toward the end of the year, aims to raise awareness and understanding about the pressing humanitarian issues. And for me personally, Ukraine is a personal issue to me because I'm actually part of the United for Ukraine program as an immigration officer, where I'm actually working to assist Ukrainian families or asylees in coming from Poland as their point of departure by airplane to America to become an American asylees, as we do our part as America to help those in need during that current crisis. This is just a side note about what I do as well in my my paid job. But back to the chapter, it brings us immense pride to announce that as the inaugural chapter in America, we have been recognized as a 2023 National Chapter of Excellence and Chapter of the Year. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all of our fellow chapters for their outstanding leadership and tireless advocacy. In conclusion, I'm at 3 minutes. We look forward to continuing our commitment to making a meaningful difference in the world and stand ready to contribute further to the causes that we all hold so dear.
Wow, that was a wonderful report. You see why it helps to write it? Because you can read it in 3 minutes. David, my hat's off to you. Congratulations. Your chapter is a wow. Jenny is a proud member, and I love Jenny, and I love all of your members. So with that, I'm going to go to Judith Harris, because Judith, president, is taking care of her family. She had to travel, so Judith asked if she could do the report, and I said, absolutely. Judith Harris, please, and tell us which chapter you are representing.
I am the Pasadena chapter with the Pasadena. We have an incredible president. Her name is Ann Diederich. She couldn't be here today, but she is phenomenal. We are partnering with Polytechnic School in Pasadena. It's a school that has a model UN group, and they also have a student chapter. So those two are separate and both participate with us. And for UN Day, we had a program at the school, and they have a huge auditorium, and it was filled. We had food, and our speaker was a gentleman from Cambodia who Anne has known for many years. His name is Arn Chorn Pond, and he was kidnapped as a 12-year-old child in Cambodia during the war, and by the Khmer Rouge. And he talked about his experience and how he survived. He said he was handed a gun, a big one, at age 12, and told that if he didn't use it to kill others, that they would use it to kill him. And
that's the tragedy of war right there in a nutshell. Thank you, but keep going.
Of course, we all hear about things and learn about things. I have never been in the presence and had a one-on-one with an actual victim. And this man was like no one else I have ever met in my life. I had about 20 minutes with him, just the two of us, before the program started. And it was life-altering for me. I have never been so humbled in my life. He was quite amazing. He was able to escape to a jungle and survived. This was as a 12-year-old. And he talked about the transformative power of arts in human rights. And he reminded me of Robert Mueller, Barbara. He played a very basic wooden flute, and it sounded like a symphony. And he has a nonprofit, which is, I've got it here. I didn't write it down, but it's an arts program for young people in Cambodia that he supports. And It was an amazing program. I was really happy that there were so many people, and there's a lot of student involvement with all of our partnerships with Polytechnic. There were 3 students who did videos on sustainability that were aired at the event. And we are planning Human Rights Day. This is the 14th year we've partnered with the mayor of Pasadena. And this year, it's actually going to be an event at the Rotunda at Pasadena City Hall from 6 to 7:30. And we're going to have a panel of speakers on the environment and sustainability and accessibility and food and music. And we're honoring a longtime UNA member, Lee Adams, who some of you might know. She's an artist and also an environmentalist. She does lots of projects at the Arcadia Arboretum. So we're honoring her, and we also were presenting her with the John Charles Memorial Service Award. So I think that's pretty much what we're up to.
Well, you know, it's interesting because, Judith, you seem to always get people out. And is it your speaker or is it your PR? What works best for you?
I think it's partnerships. Partnering with the mayor. I was involved in developing that partnership, and we are now working with our 3rd mayor. And as soon as a new one is elected, I call City Hall, and I know the assistant, the mayor's assistant, it stays consistent, which is really nice. And I call her and I say, when can we meet with the new mayor? And they're always happy to meet with us because we're bringing something to them, an opportunity to them, not an ask. And mayors are usually asked.
I had a feeling you were was the correspondence you had with the office, because many people, they don't do that, and look what you get when return the attendance, and then when the mayor shows up, everybody shows up.
Mhm. Yeah.
Any last word, Judith, before I thank you?
I think that's enough for me.
Oh, that's wonderful. They're very lucky that you do that. And you know, she was president of her chapter. She was Southern California UNA chapter division leader, and yet she takes it upon herself to do what's needed. That means call the mayor, make an appointment, and be there. And with that, I'm going to move to Bianca. Are you on for a chapter report?
Yes,
Thank you. Would you like to do your report in Whittier, please?
sure, of course. So hi everybody, and for those who don't know me, my name is Bianca, and I'm the chapter president for the Whittier chapter that's here. And so what we recently did have for UN Day, we essentially had like a advocacy 101, so how to be an advocate for the UN. So we provided some tips. It was over Zoom, small turnout, but it was pretty okay. We actually it was a nice like one-on-one with myself and our past president John, and we actually had a participant from the UNA Northern New Jersey chapter who came in, and it was nice, really nice dialogue and all that good stuff. And we're pretty excited for us, after being on Zoom for a really long time, we're inviting our members for like a holiday brunch that we're gonna do here locally in Whittier in person. So we're gonna send out that RSVP form. It's gonna be held on Sunday, on Human Rights Day, actually, Sunday, December 10th, around like noon. So we're hoping to meet some of our members in person, as we haven't really done that in a really long time, just because of course with COVID and stuff. And yeah, right before the holidays too, right before closing off the year. And then we're pretty excited as well, as we're developing, like Judith mentioned, a partnership with the sanitation district, actually, as they host a big Earth Day event here locally in Whittier. So we're gonna be having our table out there, UNA Whittier, and then we also have what's called the Whittier Area Environmental Coalition. That is a project of ours. So we're gathering and looking around of our local groups, environmental groups here in Whittier, and we're gonna, be out there and hopefully not just help us get that exposure to as well in person. The community outreach is really important. So we definitely want to help and do that for our fellow partners as well. So, get the community involved, because we're very big on climate action on that SDG goal number 13. And so, as you all may know, so we usually host our own Earth Day event here in Whittier. And so now we're going to be partnered up with a bigger organization and hopefully, gain some new members and just like exposure and just learn from each other and hopefully develop solutions too as well. So we've been really good with our interns as well. And yeah, it's pretty much it. Looking forward to next year. And wow, it's a crazy year for 2023, but looking forward to what 2024 brings for us as well.
Bianca, thank you. That was an excellent report. And you notice she talked about her October 24th UN Day event. And so I'll do the Santa Barbara chapter, then we'll go to Mel. The Santa Barbara chapter seems to be offering peace prizes now. We did our 8th annual peace prize for a local entity in Santa Barbara, and 2 women won that prize because they're working in healthcare and trying to help women achieve the healthcare they need regardless of their financial background. And then we gave, in October 24th, we gave the Robert Mueller Peace Prize to a couple in Vancouver. And that was our October 24th event because we felt that the United Nations Association really is honored in other countries too. And we have been giving the Peace Prize for Robert Mueller for people who are going beyond the call of duty and making sure that we have a world at peace. And they're working on visioneers, and that was a couple, that was the first couple who got it. The first Peace Prize went to Ted Turner, and the second Peace Prize, we always try to get somebody from the United Nations. Ambassador Chaudhry got the second Peace Prize. He was our keynote speaker, Ambassador Chaudhry from Bangladesh. And if you ever need an in at the United Nations, look up Ambassador Chaudhry. He is available. He helps you whenever you need it. He'll tell you where to go if you need to know something. So in addition to Mel and advocacy and Barry being a rep, we have an advocacy ambassador who believes in the United Nations Association, and a very verbal one, and the one who started the culture of peace. And that's why I'm really pleased to go to Mel, because Mel has behind him the Sustainable Development Goals. Mel, tell us about your chapter and what you've been up to.
Sure. Thank you, Barbara. The Pomona Valley chapter is my chapter. And I'm this is our Facebook page. And it's probably the easiest way we're honoring the 102 United Nations staff that have been killed in the Israel-Hamas war so far. Very sad occasion. A couple of days ago, 3 days ago now, we had a talk on pacifism and militarism in Japan. Very fascinating why they don't want a military. And here's our UN Day celebration on October 26th. You'll see we had a nice turnout. I think there were 240 people there with a music interlude to start. Partners all around the room. And this was our featured speaker, Dr. Williams. She's the head of climate studies at Claremont McKenna College, talking about building resilience. Here's the room of people that were there. About 140 students and about 100 community members made up that that evening.
That's a nice crowd. How did you do that, Mel?
Partnerships.
See?
Yeah, what was just mentioned. Here's some of the partnerships on this poster. The colleges, Pitzer, Pomona, Claremont McKenna, and then Sustainable Claremont, Blue Planet United, and also our chapter, of course. And we have the QR code to get things done. Here we were honoring Bertle. And then our September program was if you sign up for our United Nations Association Pomona Valley Chapter Facebook page, you can walk to this program, and I put the slides for this program in the post. So if you hit the post, you can walk through this guy's slides and he tells you about the Sahel, which is an interesting part of Africa, very important to world security. And it was a great talk and a pretty good turnout. We also try to have all of our events also be on Zoom. So our next meeting is coming up on January 23rd, 28th, and that'll be our annual meeting. And we are looking forward to electing our next round of officers. And anything you'd like to add, Sylvia? You're our most distinguished member.
No, unless Barbara, do you want me to talk about the peace conference now?
I would like that. Mel, thank you
All
for
right.
Sylvia.
Sure.
The,
It's gonna bring her in, and you did it. God bless you. Sylvia, please. Sylvia Whitlock, as I mentioned to you, is a very active United Nations Association member. They are lucky to have her in their chapter. So Sylvia, are you doing something special?
well, we're doing with Rotary, the 34th annual peace conference, the Copenhagen Peace Conference. And I can't imagine a time when it's more needed than it is now. It's going to be the 27th of January, 2024, at the Nixon Library in Yorba Linda, starting at 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock, not 8 o'clock?
9 a.m., starting at 9 a.m. Anyone interested, I have some free tickets, cost $40 for admission. I have some free tickets that you get if you contribute to the conference. The keynote speaker is Brian Rush. He's the CEO of Out for Equality, and he's a founding member of the RIDEI task force. He is a fantastic young man. He's going to be our keynote speaker. There will be a panel that's entitled Engaging Panel on Mental Health. Mental health, the buzzword of today, covering destigmatizing conversations, raising awareness, and advancing access. With a number of interesting panelists, Jen Freeman, Lori Lake, Chris Florendo, and Silas Segario. So
We
go
go to your-
online, and
We go to your Rotary Club meeting in order to reserve a seat? Your Rotary
you have to be.
Facebook page? Or what?
No. You can email me if you're interested, because I have some free tickets. Gave one to Barbara today, and I have a few more.
Sylvia, give us your email. Sylvia Whitlock at?
No, just say Sylvia5@msn.com.
Okay.
Sylvia5@msn.com.
You can put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat. Put it in the chat.
That'll be great.
Find it.
So I'm going to be there. If anybody joins me, I'll bring you some mead wine. My son has just unloaded a lot of mead wine in my garage, and it's absolutely delicious. And I'll give you some honey wine if you join us. All right. Sylvia, thank you, Sylvia.
Sylvia5@msn.com. I put it in the chat so you can get to me there. Or if you would like to get to directly to the peace conference, you can.
This is quite an event. I spoke at one of these.
It is. I mean, this is the 34th annual. It would not have survived had it not been a good event. The
It's
34th
such
annual.
an
Garbage died 2 years ago, and it continues.
It's amazing. And the fact that it's in person is really good. And it's a great big
Yes.
location, so you don't have to
Yes,
work.
and breakfast is served and all of that good stuff.
Thank you. What time does it end?
It ends at noon.
Oh, it's so
9 a.m. to
early.
noon.
Now you all can give us some morning. Just have to drive there 9 o'clock to noon and you get breakfast. Wow.
That's
Okay,
right.
okay, good job.
Yes.
Bianca, your hand is up.
Continental breakfast, also a tour of the museum.
Oh, good. I'm gonna go. Bianca?
Oh, thank you. So I remember a few years back, I think roughly right before the pandemic, for the division, we were part of like the exhibitors. Will we be part of that again? Is that in consideration? Or I don't know if Sylvia, you know the logistics too, and or of course Barbara, I'm not too sure because I know there's a few Rotarians here that are maybe perhaps part of the planning committee for that. But is it too late for us, the division, to be a part of that, or is it just to solely attend as individuals?
Sylvia, can she bring her material to have a booth at this conference? They usually give it to us free, Bianca. They just are so glad to have somebody come in and represent their chapters. So Sylvia, what is the answer? Can she be a member of the booths?
Member of the,
You know, members who have a little information about their chapter or about the Rotary or
you can come in and we will make sure you have some time.
yeah, because I work with Art Fisher and every year he tries to get me to go to these meetings and open a booth and I never do, but this time I'll be there.
Just ask
Oh,
for me
because I was
when
wondering,
you,
like, as
just
like
ask
the,
for me when you come in. I should be right there. Just ask me.
Oh, Mel,
Oh, there
oh,
it
thank you
is.
for that.
Oh.
Okay. There it is.
Oh, 8 to 12. Okay.
don't get rid of that. I'm gonna take a picture because I don't have any information I can share with people that I want to take in my carpool. So just thank you, Mel. I'm gonna take a photo. You all should take a photo also, so you can be sure to be there. And I promise to bring you some delicious wine, free. You don't have to pay for it. Okay, now
Yeah.
with that, is there,
Oh,
I
I see Barry has his hand up. Sorry.
can't see it.
Yeah, just
I better
on
be
that
hard.
topic,
Oh, Barry,
in many previous years, the division has sponsored with, I think, a $250 sponsorship and had a table
Mhm.
at that annual event. I don't know if there's been any discussion or if anybody's approached the division to do that, but
not yet, but I think it's a great idea. I can certainly bring the things that I have been using for other Earth Day events with the division. And we could have a booth. Yeah, let's do it. Barry, are you gonna be there?
January 27th,
9 to noon.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, if you're there, you can be in the booth with me. We'll do it.
That's a Saturday. Saturday morning, 8 o'clock to noon.
Yeah, as far as I know, I can be there.
That's
I
great.
think I have
Okay.
the cable guy is supposed to come that morning.
All right. Mel, are you gonna be there? Because Mel, I'm gonna bring a whole case of wine.
Rotary,
All right, let's go back.
February 27.
Is there-
Maybe.
Is there anybody on any chapter that is here that I have not been able to identify? If you're representing a chapter, I don't see anybody else in the lineup I don't see anybody from Orange County. I don't see anybody from San Diego, but if I'm wrong, please tell me you're here.
Or
Because-
Los Angeles?
Nope. You know, Sid told you that they're taking their child, so she's probably with him. So I'm going to go to elections because I want to get to Peter FIEKOWSKY. So Bianca, are you ready for this moment, this historical moment when we're going to elect our new slate of officers? And I am absolutely amazed by the two latest people, Mary McKenzie and Kamal Sharma, who are also nominated. And we have David Wick and Sharon Byrne. So Bianca, take it away.
Okay. Hi everybody. So I am also alongside being the VP of Communications for the division, the nominating chair. So we did get a few self-nominations. So with that, as Barbara mentioned, we'll move on into elections. And in the email that was sent out to everybody, you should be able to read and see the open positions that we have. So we'll go along with first the slate. My apologies. So for president 2023 to 2025, these are the terms. So Barbara, and she's proud to continue to be a second-year term. Secretary Crystal Martinez, Treasurer Sid Ramesh, VP of Programs Bettina Hausman, Vice President of Advocacy. We have a nomination for Mary McKenzie.
And because Mary McKenzie is new, let's have a little bit of, do you want to read a little bit about her background? Or have you all read in the minutes? I mean,
I could read that she is from the UNA San Diego chapter. And she does have her brief bio there below. And VP membership, we have an open for nomination. Young Professionals Chair, we have a nomination, self-nomination from Kamal Sharma, who is from UNA Orange County chapter. And as Barry mentioned earlier, as a regional rep for us, we have 3. But right now we have a regional rep nominee, which is Dave Rice, who is currently serving as president of the UNA Orange County chapter. And then we also have a regional rep nominee, Sharon Byrne, who is from, if not mistaken, the UNA Santa Barbara chapter.
and with that, we have continuing members also, as you can read. Jenny Hatfield, Bianca Communication, Judith Harris, Chapter Development. But Judith Harris separated membership and chapter development, so we have an opening for membership. Nominating committee, Bianca has done a fabulous job. Nominating committee members, Mel and Judith and myself, and I've been honored to work with you. Now, we have the slate before you. Before we approve the slate, my members with their hand raised, I'm going to ask, are there any other nominations or nominees that would like to take my place or any other place on this slate? Hearing none, I am going to read the bylaws again, and it says can vote by unanimous approval of the slate, or we can go one by one. But because our speaker, Peter FIEKOWSKY, has shown up, if you look at your screen, you'll see Peter wave at us. I am so glad you're early. I'm going to ask for us to approve the slate, and I need an, I have to ask you, do we have to have a, somebody say, I would not motion? Barry,
I have a question.
please.
So we have the one vacancy, but Bianca, is Bettina's term complete in June, is it not?
Yes. And Sharon would wait till June until.
So so we could potentially be electing Dave and Sharon today. Dave could start serving immediately and be
Sharon,
be in and Sharon both be in effective in June.
correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes, because as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, Barry, so because this is for regional rep, so this is for UNA USA National Council, the terms begin June to June?
Right.
Okay, yeah, so to fulfill the current vacancy, it looks like, as we've discussed, and just to be transparent with everybody too, of course, that's here. So for Bertle's position, it would be Dave Rice first, and then new onboarding would be Sharon Burns starting in June. Yeah.
Okay, Bianca, do we now ask for a motion to accept the slate?
Okay. Yes. Oh, this is
So moved.
I second.
All right, we have
all
our
right. Thank you, Barry and David.
who are current members. Bettina, I'm sorry, Bianca, you may take the roll call. Just to have people who are raise their hand.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. A roll call for. I'm
So
sorry.
just raise their hand. I didn't mean a roll call.
Oh, okay. So for all those that want to approve
Favor.
unanimously, I'll raise your hands, please. Okay. All right. I don't think I see anyone. None. Okay. So any like objections?
Thank you, Susan.
We're all good. Yeah. So happy, yay, elections for everybody. And thank you all so much for your commitment and participation for serving on the board for the division for Southern California UNA. All right, back to you, Barbara.
And Bianca, are you heading the nominations committee going forward for the next 12 months as well?
Yes.
Correct, yes.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you.
Learn all of this. And so it's so nice to have a second term doing something. And so I'm just delighted. I would one moment before I introduce Peter Fiekowsky to introduce Tom Carlisi. Tom Carlisi is from Columbus, Ohio, a very active Rotarian, and has joined us today because he believes that Peter Fiekowsky has some information that he can share with his Rotary clubs and his Rotaractors. And Barry, did you want to say something else? Your hand is up.
Yes, please, if you don't mind, just before the speakers get introduced and start, and welcome to Peter. I want to mention, if I could for a moment, that the division has been very generous in teaming up with the Rotary Action Group for Peace and promoting the concerts for peace. The first one was held in September. Over 1,100 people watched it that first day. The link is still available for people that would like to see it. It was really terrific, with talent from around the world, from Ukraine, from Kurdistan, from Turkey, from in the US. It went, Penny, could you perhaps mute? Thank you. It was really great. It went so well that we decided to do another one really quickly. So we decided to do on the eve of Thanksgiving a concert dedicated to the culture and beauty of Indigenous communities. And so there will be a concert Wednesday, November 22nd. It will include music from Black Eyed Peas, as well as in interviews that I had 2 days ago in Edmonton with Chief Ojima, and with comments about the history and culture of the First Nation clan in Canada. We'll have music and song from the from Mexico, from the clans in Mexico. It should be really great. If you have not seen the flyer, my email is for this is conversationsforpeace. If you'd like to email me to request the link, be happy to do that. There's no charge to attend, and we promote a couple of nonprofits during the concert. This particular concert will benefit the American Indian College Foundation, as well as the United Indian Institute, I think it's called. And in the previous concert, we honored or recognized or promoted 4 different nonprofits, including one in Southern California, along with the UN US for the UN Refugee Agency. And there's the flyer. Thank you for posting that. And that concert, by the way, had a registration link where there was an optional contribution line, but most contributions were made directly, which we don't know about, but to those charities that we promoted during the concert. The people who registered and made optional contributions raised a total of $775.
So you just started talking yet?
The concert committee decided to
Still didn't.
Is that you, Bettina?
Yeah.
Becky, Becky, perhaps you could mute. Becky, can somebody mute Becky, please?
Sure, I can find her. Just hold on.
Barbara will be able to.
Yes, I can.
Thank you. So the division received a total of $775 from that first concert to be split with Rotary.
Do you want to know Chanel sample? Like from Chanel, the brand Chanel?
Becky, could you please
I'm
mute?
trying to mute her, but okay, Becky, you're muted.
All right. Sorry, you guys. The committee for the concert agreed to rather than sending that money to the Rotary Action Group for Peace and to the division, that we split that money up among the groups that we raised money for during that concert. So that's how that money is being dispersed.
That's a beautiful poster. And again, if they want to register, they just go to Conversations for Peace. Is that correct?
They can go to.
Oh, you got a QR code. Excellent.
Well,
okay.
They can go to Conversations for Peace. The flyer's there. You can click on it. You will not get to a registration page. You'll get to the page for what's called Connect TV. And there will be a place there for a button to add it to your calendar. And there's no fee to attend.
Thank you.
Any questions, please email me, conversationsforpeace@gmail.com.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to.
By the way, just one last word. Bettina designed the flyer. She does great work. given all the work that she's doing in the world to assist people in terrible situations, she was able to dedicate some time to create our flyer. So I want to shout out to Bettina.
Yes, and you're right. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing.
Yep.
Green? Thank you. I want to just thank you, Barry, for doing these concerts. You're like the unsung hero, and I was on the last one last time, and it was just so phenomenal. I just didn't want to do anything, just sit there and listen. The music was beautiful. You did not spend a lot of time explaining things. You just let the musicians open up our hearts to peace. And I loved that. Thank you so much. And as
It wouldn't be if it wasn't for Werner Erhard and the Landmark Forum. So thank you all for listening.
Yes, it's our pleasure. And again, Barry has quite a lot on his plate too. He always manages to work with a treasurer so that Sid is up to date. Sid is a wonderful treasurer for our chapter. I shouldn't say chapter, but our division. And with that, I'm going to introduce, and I'm going to put him on speaker view in a minute. I want you to meet Peter FIEKOWSKY. I have had the honor of hearing 3 of his talks, once at the Yacht Club in Santa Barbara, once on a Rotary E-Club of World Peace, and now today. And the reason I'm so excited is because we have just been made a whale sanctuary in Santa Barbara. Now, that may sound like no combination to climate restoration, Peter's book, but it actually is. I have this theory that anything people can create, nature can cure. So climate restoration is Peter FIEKOWSKY's book. I ordered it on Amazon, and the next thing I was ready to talk to Peter, but I didn't want to talk to him because I wanted to keep reading his book. His book is so easy to read. If you get into these chapters, mine is all underlined because he really shows that we can restore the climate. Yes, we can change our mind to collaborate and collect the seaweed that is needed in the plankton that can be used with iron ore restoration. Now, I say restoration. Iron ore fertilization is the correct terminology. Iron ore fertilization. Now, to me, to prove it, we are working heart and heart, hand in hand, to get UCSB to be the first place we can try this out. Many people say iron fertilization. Well, listen, go back to the climate that we have had. We haven't had any solutions. We've only had people, as they say, moving the deck chairs on a boat that's about to sink. No, we don't want that. We want to restore the climate. Now, in addition to Peter talking about it, he has actual evidence that it can work. Look at the whales. Now, this may sound silly to you, but it's not. When a whale goes to the bottom of the ocean and eats and comes up, what do you think exposes him to the world? His trail of poop. This trail of poop is iron filled. This restores the plankton. Now, I'm not going to say any more. Now, aren't you excited that Peter is here to explain why I already told you? And with that, I'm putting you on speaker view, Peter. Now, in addition, Peter is the only future that will sustain the human race, an MIT-educated physicist, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, philanthropist with 27 patents, 30 years experience as a climate lobbyist for poverty and climate issues, and over the past decade has been working to build the organizations required to ensure the survival and the flourishing of humanity. He also has a peace podcast. When I interviewed him, I said, Peter, why are you doing this? I want my grandchildren to live in a world where they can breathe. And so with that, I'm going to go to speaker view and welcome Peter. And Barry, you must be talking because you're on. And I want to get to Peter, say something and we'll be able
to. Okay.
He is Peter FIEKOWSKY and climate restoration, the only future that will sustain our human race. Welcome.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, Barbara. I'm so glad to have found you, or have you have found me, actually. And great to talk to the UN Association. They've been around for a long time. I started doing my work on, I'm a physicist by training. And so I was doing everything else as a volunteer, just as you guys do United Nations Association as a volunteer. And just back in the 80s, a fundamental part of the results.org I worked with was UN Association volunteers. So just thank you all for being here. So Barbara I told you a little bit about restoring the climate. And I'm looking at the faces here thinking, now, what do these people want to hear about the climate? And the fundamental thing about the climate is we really do want our children to have a climate where humanity will flourish. And if you look at what the climate experts say, if you even look at what the United Nations climate people say, they say, well, we want 1.5 degrees. Now, I don't know if that sinks to your heart. It doesn't sink to my heart. I don't know what 1.5 degrees means, other than it's maybe warmer than 0 degrees. On the other hand, what we want to do is restore the climate that we had 100 to 200 years ago. That I think you can understand. A climate before the big storms we have, before the wildfires we have, before the floods, the droughts, the heat waves over 120 degrees. All that actually can be ended, can be recovered. Now, have any of you ever heard that before? We actually could go back. Isn't it weird that you haven't even heard it before? So let me phrase it in a slightly different way. And so imagine that there was a button that we could press. And if you press the button, it would get the CO2 in the air back to what it was 100 years ago. And it would cost almost nothing to push the button, a 1/millionth of the global GDP or something like that. Would you press that button? Well, of course, right? We would want to get the climate back. And so if you're probably thinking, if that button existed, we would be pressing it already, because obviously we want to do that. And it's a little bit like the Ending War 101, making the impossible possible. We feel like it's impossible, and so we don't even act on it. And we may or may not talk about war here, but I was just preparing some notes and thinking, making the impossible possible, that's exactly what we're doing. And so probably the first question you ask is, well, is it possible to restore CO2? And I'm just going to show, I think, 1 or 2 slides, because this is not a slide-like audience. And I'm preparing a slide for a bunch of scientists on Monday, and my head is in the graphs. But I'll show you this one. So I apologize for my cough. So this is a graph of the ups and downs or the CO2 in the atmosphere over the last 1,000,000 years. So we're here. So this is about 12,000 years from here to here. And then and a little bit before that is where the last ice age ended. And so the temperature was down and the CO2 was way down here. And then humans evolved probably in this warm period here, because when the CO2 gets warmer, gets up, of course, I'm sure everyone's heard, when there's more CO2 in the air, it's a greenhouse gas. It's like putting a blanket over the earth or putting more glass on your greenhouse, and it warms up the earth more. And so these top areas are the warm periods, and then the areas down here are the ice ages. And so you can see we've had a lot of ice ages. And our grandkids or your kids, or when most of us were kids, we didn't have the movie Ice Age 1, but we had repeating ice ages. And the thing to see is that to get from where we are now, from the present, which is CO2 at 420, and there's not going to be a test, so you don't need to remember 420, but 420 parts per million is how much CO2 is in the air. To get back to the safe level, which is what we've had, that's the same amount of CO2 removal that nature does 10 times in the last 1,000,000 years, here, 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 and so on. And so that's the good news, is that nature knows how to do it. Well, we know how nature did it, and we can do the same thing. I'll tell you a little bit about how that's done technically. But the first thing to get is, why do we think it's impossible if it's been done 10 times? Why do we think it's impossible to restore the climate if that's exactly what nature has done 10 times? And the answer is much like war, that with war, we've always our planet has always been full of tribes who fight. And so, it's just sort of the nature of tribes to fight for land. And you think that you can never change it. Well, we are going to change that. With the climate, people thought, well, when we don't have any control over the climate, and so all we can do is fight about it. And so climate since 1980 has been a political activity, not an engineering activity. But the only way we're going to change the physical CO2 was a certain kind of subtle engineering. And but here's the interesting thing is, so we're here, and the highest that our planet has ever been is this 300 parts per billion, just for 1,000 or 2,000 years right over here. And the last time our planet has been as warm as it is, which is up here at 420, the last time that happened was 10 million years ago. This was before our gene line of humans and then bonobos and chimps, before those even evolved from the gorillas. This is like a long time ago, a very, very different world. Oh, will we survive at this level? Well, yeah, probably someone will. We have good technology. Our air conditioning technology is pretty good. Would we want to? No, because the whole ecosystem for the planet will change, and it'll be a new planet, and all of our customs will be inappropriate. And so then why is the Paris goal up here, which is even what the temperature was, I don't know, 15 million years ago? And the reason for that is, maybe the next slide answers that. No, it doesn't. Okay. The reason that our goal is so high and insanely high, right? It's like, you've got to be kidding. Why would we do that? Is that the goal was set in 1990. Now, how many of you remember the climate in 1990? Mel says, maybe I do. But yeah, the thing is, in 1990, there wasn't a climate. It was like air to the birds and water to the fish. It was just the way it was, and there were warm times and cool times, and the political parties were arguing whether global warming was real. And so that was the context in which they created the climate goal. And the climate goal they created was eliminate human interference in the climate system, which made sense in 1990. Of course, things are totally different now. As you saw, CO2 levels are way above anything our species or the species that led to our species has survived. And no one has figured out how to get the UN to update their goal. And that's the reason why. Good, because they've never had to do anything like that. But this is a whole new phase for humanity. So, so there's a four-pronged approach that we're taking to make this whole thing happen. And being the smarty pants behind the four-pronged approach, I can tell you this is going to happen. Which is a little weird to say, because we normally say we're going to try to end the war in Gaza. We're going to try to, the war in Ukraine, we know that's going to end, fairly soon, because we hear that that Russia's running out of weapons. They're down using Soviet era weapons. But we're not trying to end the climate crisis. We are going to end the climate crisis. And what we're going to do it, the way we're going to do it is the same way that nature, the same way nature does it. So we know it's safe. We know it can be done quickly. Okay, and what is it? The way nature cools a planet before ice ages is with photosynthesis. You sort of guessed I was going to say that, but it's not on land, because we all know that trees, when they die, and crops, when they die, they rot and they burn, and this carbon goes back into the air. So it's not a long-term 100,000 or million year solution. What nature does is it produces more photosynthesis in the ocean. In the ocean, when plants grow, they and the animals that eat them end up sinking into the deep ocean, and there's almost no oxygen. Like, there's no source of oxygen in the deep ocean, so it doesn't rot. It just stays there. It falls apart into pieces and molecules, but there's no oxygen to oxidize it. And it stays there. And with the ice ages, it stays there until the ocean currents change in such a way that there is oxygen available to oxidize it again. And that's when the CO2 comes out and the planet warms up again. So, so then you might ask, well, okay, so it does photosynthesis in the ocean, and the ocean, you probably know, is 75% of the surface of our planet. There's plenty of sunlight, plenty of water. Turns out there's plenty of the phosphorus and nitrogen needed to grow plants. But what's missing is the micronutrient iron. Iron, as you can imagine, doesn't dissolve well in water. It tends to sink. People often call it iron filing, so that's not what you use. But the iron tends to sink, and so most of the ocean is blue, like my shirt. It's beautiful blue. You know, those of us who travel love going to those blue beaches, but they're not green. If it were green, you'd have photosynthesis. The blue area is missing in almost all cases the micronutrient iron. And now if you live on the East Coast, for example, the oceans there are very green. Why? Because you get runoff. You have a large continental shelf, and you have runoff from the Appalachians and so on. So you have plenty of iron in the ocean there, so it's plenty green. But we go down over past the continental shelf, and then the iron, sort of falls farther down, and then it turns blue again. And here on the Pacific coast, it gets blue pretty quick because the coast falls off quite quickly. So what we're going to do is duplicate the same way nature provides the iron. And that's we're not going to use dust storms. Iron uses dust storms, or sometimes dust coming from volcanoes, volcanic ash. We could do that, but it's hard to control. But what's been done many times is to take basically iron fertilizer, iron sulfate, that you get at your garden store, and distribute minute amounts of it over certain parts of the ocean where it's been shown that it can produce the right effect. And there are probably places where it doesn't. And there's not been enough research yet to know what exactly the best places are. But it's like gardening. You find what part of your garden grows cucumbers the best. But it's not. You don't sweat over it. You don't stop. You don't delay growing your garden to figure out what part. You just plant your garden, and then over a period of years, you figure out the best places. And the same is going to be true. So it's called iron fertilization. And Barbara, you said it wrong. You said iron ore. It's ocean iron fertilization. Just you had a slip of the tongue there. I just wanted to remind you for next time, because I know you're more of a loudmouth than I am. As much as I'm going to be talking the next few minutes, you get a lot more talking done. So the way it's done is small amounts of iron sulfate. Now here's how small it is. Imagine a square meter, a square yard, and inside of that, imagine 1/100th of a teaspoon of fertilizer. That's how much, 1/100th of a teaspoon, like just a few grains per square meter per year. Now, remember last time you swept your front porch, right? And you had about 1/2 cup of dust. Okay, so it's like 1,000th of how much, or 100th of how much dust falls onto your front porch. That's how little it is. The cost of the iron to do this globally is going to be the iron will be about $10 million a year. And then the ships that distribute it, probably $100 million a year, because they can be old ships. They're in no hurry. They're going from the shore to certain areas offshore where it works well. And the way they do let me back up. So they need to do less than 1% of the ocean area. That's how effective this is when they've done it. Typically, the last time it was done at scale was actually the only time it was done at scale. It was about 100 miles in diameter. And it took them about a week and a half to distribute it across that. And it was in an eddy. If you remember, when you open up your sink, you get little eddies, or your bathtub, you get those little circular eddies. And you get those all over the ocean. They're triggered by ocean currents hitting things on the seafloor. And then that causes an eddy, which goes all the way up to the surface. But the eddy is good because it keeps that iron, that minute amount of iron, in place for about 4 to 8 months. And that's enough time for the plankton to grow. And when they've done it, what they find is that they go out, one day or for several days, distribute it. They come back a day later, and in less than a day, the ocean's already turned green. And about 2 days later, they say that you can actually smell the plankton growing, because they said it smells like new mown hay. I've heard this from many people who've done this. So I've never done it, so I don't have firsthand experience. But they said it's just amazing. And that then about a week later, you start seeing fish coming. So that somehow the fish know where the lunch buffet is, which makes sense, right? If we were Mother Nature evolving fish, we would give them a sixth sense on where the lunch buffet is, obviously. And we're not sure how they do that, but it may, who knows? It may be presumably some sort of sound that the phytoplankton and they call it the zooplankton, which are the phytoplankton is the algae. And then the zooplankton are the animals, the little microscopic animals that eat the algae. And someone told me they make some sort of noise. Anyway, but so within days they have fish. Within a week they've got whales coming, and then the next week, with all these fish and whales, they have birds coming 100 miles offshore. Well, because the seabirds, that's not a big deal, but they know where the lunch buffet is. And so it's just really exciting, the people who've done it. And then and it just stays like that. The amount to do the whole deal, to get the CO2 back to safe levels by 2050, is going to take about 500 of those eddies. And as I said, that totals up to about less than 1% of the whole ocean area. And so if you hear about ocean iron fertilization, people don't realize how efficient it is. And I'll say more about that in a moment. But it's because it's so much more efficient than people imagine. People, when they just, how people talk, and they'll say anything that seems plausible so they get an audience. So and see, scientists do that too. I hate to tell you this, as a physicist, it takes a lot of training with public speaking if you want to be really accurate. And so people think you have to do the whole ocean. And they have no evidence for that. They have theory, but no evidence that they need to do half the ocean or the whole ocean. It's 1%. And so if you imagine taking the whole ocean, which is half blue, or maybe 70% blue, and turning it green, you say that's scary. Don't do that. And absolutely, we're not going to do that. And I'm warning you, because when you share this with people, 1 out of 6 people, that was a bullshit statement. A lot of people will ask you, you can't do it over the whole ocean. You say, yes, no, you don't do it over the whole ocean. You do it over 1% of the ocean, just like nature does. And is it safe? Well, nature's been doing it for 1 million years. That's a very good sign. We don't know how many millions of years, but probably 500 million or something. And there have been 13 scientific experiments done in the last 30 years. And those experiments there's been zero documented examples of bad side effects. The one full scale, the 100-mile diameter test that was done 11 years ago, they did see side effects. And one of them was an unexpected side effects. Excuse me. They were hoping to save the coho salmon or chum, I can't remember which. But it turned out it was pink salmon that happened to grow where they put the iron, and the pink salmon catch the next year went up 4.5-fold from what was expected and what has been coming the last few years, and that tended to continue. Okay, so pink salmon has a 2-year life cycle, and so they had this huge catch, and then the catch went way down the following year because they only did it 1 year, and then the next year the catch went way up again because there were so many pink salmon that survived the first year that they got a lot more 2 years later for the next generation. Anyway, so there was the wrong salmon, but that's okay. And the other interesting thing was the orcas, the orca whales. They hadn't had a birth in about 6 years, and after this, 2 years later, they had 5 births, and presumably that's because the female orcas had enough food to give birth, which again is perfectly logical. Now, no one has done a scientific study on it. It was unexpected. It's just a data point, but that's how you start. So those are the only 2 unexpected side effects we've seen. Again, when you discuss it, people say, well, what about harmful algal blooms? Like, when the Mississippi River goes down into the Gulf of Mexico, you've got these big areas where nothing grows because there's no oxygen in the water. And that doesn't happen here for 2 reasons. One is that the harmful algal blooms, every single one of them, the red tide and all those are all coastal, because only in the coast do you have all the runoff from the rivers that give you way too much nutrients, and then also runoff from our farms. In the deep ocean, the amount of iron is 1/1,000,000th of what it is in the coastal regions. And so they increase the iron level by a factor of 20 or 30. And so it's still 30,000 times lower than coastal areas. So you don't get any of those coastal effects. But again, people don't understand that, and people will throw that out as an objection to show how smart they are. But as I said, it's what nature does. And then the clincher is this, again, most of us look like we're old enough to remember the Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991, in June of 91. Well, if you look at the CO2 curve, actually, I'll pull it up here. Here it is. Here we go. I'm not going to talk too much about these graphs. They're very technical. This does not look like a technical crowd to me, but you've probably seen along the line graphs like this. This is CO2 over since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. These are graphs produced by the UNIPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and that's the official experts on climate. But on the CO2, so we're right here in 2022. So this is 2050 and 2022 is here. So we're here. So this is projections of different things. But right here in Mount Pinatubo, you can see it flattened out. It's the only time it flattened out since 1950. And then World War II, it flattened out. But that's the only time it's flattened out. And the reason is that there was so much iron-rich dust in the plume from Mount Pinatubo that it oxidized all of the CO2. It led to the phytoplankton pulling in all of the CO2 that we produced that year, which is 20 billion tons, 20 gigatons in 1 year. Now, it's a little bit subtle. People sort of noticed it, but they didn't really discuss it until this year. And again, the reason is that the UN in 1990 said our goal is to eliminate human interference in the climate. And so, and so the other thing you can see in these graphs is you've got the projections that the UN does. So this is their very best projection according to their thinking. The one up here is the very best projection from 8 years ago. But then climate restoration is this one, where we reduce CO2 back to this historically safe level at below 300 and keep on going to cool the planet. That my point is that because of that edict that our goal is to stop human interference in the climate, anything like ocean fertilization, which actually would reduce CO2 levels like we need, is considered to be not right. And so they call it geoengineering. And I'll say more in a second. So the thing is, so this shows how the modeling that if we do the 500 eddies a year, the CO2 comes down like this. We get to the safe level by 2050. And then the temperature, so this is modeling of the temperature given how much CO2 is in the air. And that gets back to 0. So people say 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, 3.5 degrees warming. You may have heard, I'm sure you've heard about it. You may or may not have quite grasped, as I said at the beginning, I don't know what 1.5 degrees really means. But so 0 change is what it was in 1850, through almost 1900. And then there were some volcanoes in the late 1800s, 1870, which cooled it. And so we get back to 0 warming. We get back to pre-industrial by 2100. That means that our grandkids will absolutely have a safe climate. Okay, so what does it cost? Like, can we really do it? And as I said, it's about 100 million a year. It's almost nothing. And I figured, well, 100 million, to do one of these tests, the test they did in Alaska, it was funded by a tribe in British Columbia called the Haida tribe. And the Haida were the fish of the salmon. I mean, they're the people of the salmon, and they weren't getting any salmon. They actually called the guy who did it, Russ George, and said, listen, we've heard you've been doing this, working on this ocean fertilization. Can you get our salmon back? And it cost $2.5 million. And 2/3 of that was for the scientific equipment, because he wanted to produce enough scientific data. For political reasons, that didn't happen, but the test did. But it's like $1 million. So I figured for years, like, we can get $1 million and do this. And we hadn't been able to, because the funders who have a few $1 million say, I'm not willing to risk going against the language of the UN. I know the UN wants us to restore the climate, but their language says don't restore the climate. So we're one of the 4 prongs of 4 approaches is we're working to get President Biden to endorse restoring the climate. Here in California, we passed a resolution in the Senate in July saying that California is committed to restoring a safe climate for our children. Very simple. Doesn't say how we'll do it. That it implies that we'll do it by 2050, but doesn't commit California to doing it by 2050. And we've been now working very hard to get members of Congress to introduce that into Congress. And it's beginning to go well. We don't have anyone promising to do it, but up here, Representative Lofgren has said, if you get me enough, she didn't say how many yet, but if we get enough nonprofits, environmental nonprofits, to support the idea of basically keeping our children alive. This sounds so crazy, but it's like war is crazy too. And sometimes it just takes a certain amount of cojones to move it forward. So we're working with Congress, we're working with the Secretary of Energy, Granholm, and I talked a couple of weeks ago with the president of MIT, my alma mater. And so we're getting some high-level officials, but both Congress as well as nonprofits like the Sierra Club, to promote climate restoration. And then we need to get some scientists. So we're working with Barbara on Santa Barbara. And since I talked to her last, I did get a chance to talk to the president of MIT. Now she's preoccupied with all the demonstrations about the effing war. Come on, finish getting rid of war, man. But once that dust settles, I think she'll work with us, and she'll be the first academic anywhere to publicly endorse the idea of restoring a historically safe climate for our kids. And so that's the first prong, is actually to get the political permission. Now, we're not asking for any significant funding from the US. A little funding is good, because it's sort of like donating to UNA or donating to Rotary. Donating makes your commitment real. So we'll ask for some amounts of money. But what we saw is that the political interests of the Democrats, the Republicans, the military, none of them get any benefit from our unborn grandkids or great grandkids, or and so on, because they don't vote, they don't pay taxes, they don't lobby. And so if they need to use money to support Ukraine, that's what's urgent. On the other hand, people like us, who are more or less retired, what I've seen is almost everything that we do as grandparents. I have 3 grandkids, 1.5 and 3. And we take, that's all we're here for, is to take care of our grandkids. And so we've created the Grandparents Fund to restore the climate. Here's the thing, is if all we did, this is just a simplification, if we got just the 1%ers in this country, so that's 3 million people, each of them put in $1 a day, $360 a year, that would provide the $1 billion we need to restore the climate for the whole planet. $1 a day just from the 1%ers. Now, some of you aren't 1%ers, but you could probably put a lot more than $1 a day in. And so our goal is to have the base funding be the Grandparents Fund, and then different governments will put money in when the political winds blow in the right direction, and they'll stop when the political winds blow the opposite direction. We might believe it should be some other way, but you gotta go with the wind. Anyway, and so that's the place that you guys can participate, is share with your friends that we can restore the climate. We are going to do it. It's not expensive, but we need to update the global thinking so that it's acceptable to do it. And that's beginning to happen. But the best way to do it is when there are 30,000 people doing monthly contributions to the Grandparents Fund to restore the climate, that will message up and down the government that people actually want it, right? And that will make it, I think, go very quickly for our president. Barbara's heard this many times, but early on in my campaign in the 2017, 2018, I ended up talking to the president of the UN General Assembly, the director for sustainable development. They said, absolutely, we want to restore the climate. Get us some scientific papers. I couldn't get any scientists because the scientists said, well, the UN says that we're only allowed to reduce emissions. We're not allowed to actually reduce CO2 levels because that's an intervention in the climate. So that didn't work. So I said, okay, good. Let me go to the Vatican. And so that was shortly after the Laudato Si encyclical. And so I found my way to the Vatican, got appointments with the Pope, with the head of the office where they work on climate and refugees. I said, great, we love climate restoration. The Pope even discussed it for a little while, but it didn't get any traction. It wasn't a place that he actually had any power, which is surprising at first, except, in retrospect, it's like, yeah, well, he's not a scientist. He is a scientist, actually, but there's so much political stuff going on that it's not a place he had power. But it is a place that people like you and me have power. That is, when we say we're going to restore the climate, it's very much like that in the Emperor's New Clothes, the 7-year-old kid saying, Mom, the Emperor has no clothes. And then some adults heard the kid say that, and now they had permission to say it. So we're being the Emperor, the kid in the Emperor's New Clothes, saying, we're restoring the climate. We don't care what you think, we're restoring the climate. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you, Peter. So actually, you're saying the good news is that we can actually reduce the carbon dioxide levels to a point where they were 100 years ago. Am I correct in assuming that's what you're saying to us?
That is exactly what I'm saying, yes.
Because if we can restore the climate to what it was 100 years ago, my grandchildren will be thrilled, and they won't say, Grandma, what have you done lately?
My grandchildren too. Yes. Okay, who has grandchildren? Who's going to say that? Raise your hands.
We all have grandchildren, and we're doing it because we love them and we love our climate. And that climate restoration, I want us to change our language. I want our language to be climate restoration, not climate catastrophe, because that's what we get. And I see hands popping up. And Peter, are you ready for some questions?
I'm ready for questions. And
all right, we're ready. Quanta.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation. When I look at, well, we all do that, look at the whole world, from a holistic perspective. So what do you think is for instance, we have had bomb tests in the Bikini and in the Pacific, and also bomb testings on land as well. So do you think that those wars and preparation for wars are contributing to the climate problems, as well as the problems in the ocean, the mineral imbalance that you're about? I'm just curious. I haven't looked at it, so I thought perhaps you might know something. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So Quanta, what the question I'm going to answer is, how does this all fit together? Fundamentally, if you look at CO2 over the last 300 or 400 years, it follows the population. So population has gone up tenfold, and CO2, relatively speaking, emissions have gone up tenfold. And it's not surprising because people cause pollution. And so, we're going to have to restore a sustainable population along with a sustainable climate. And I'll dive into that for a minute, because it's actually much easier than you would think. A sustainable population is what we had 100 years ago. Just if you do the math, I'm an astrophysicist by training. I love doing the math. And if you do the math, the population 100 years ago was about 2 billion people. And that's when my parents were born. And getting back down there, and we went up in 100 years, and we can be back down to that level essentially by the end of the century in 80 years, 77 years. And the way is with smaller families. And of course, you've probably read in the news that women more and more are having fewer kids, more and more women are having no kids. And it's intuitive. They look around and they see the pollution, they see the climate, they see the wars, and they say, I don't need to add some more kids to this equation. And the thing to remember is, by the end of the century, pretty much everyone we know will have died a natural death. Almost everyone on the planet will have died, because it'll be 80 years from now. And so it's only a matter of how many births there are. And what's critical is the number of people who are under 40. Because after 40, pretty much your lives are devoted to next generations. And so it takes a lot of energy if you my grandkids are just beginning to get out of diapers. Even though my kids live down the street, my trash bins and recycling bins are always full of the boxes for the beds and the desks and the changing tables and all this stuff. Kids are where almost all of our waste goes. And so by bringing the number of kids back down to what it was 300 years ago, that'll bring the population back to what it was 100 years ago. And so the population of 100 years ago is the goal. And we can get there with just the birth rate that they used to have in Italy. Italy's birth rate has dropped a lot. So it's actually higher than Italy's birth rate. We'll get us there by the end of the century. The point is, Quanta, the point is that it is connected. And in polite company, it's becoming more and more accepted to talk about having small families and bringing the population to a sustainable level. And as the UN Association, it's valuable for you to bring that into conversations, a sustainable population. It's a new concept, right? When most of us were young, they talked about zero population growth. They talked about a stable population of 11 billion, which was 15 times more than the planet had ever sustained.
Exactly.
It's because no one had the cojones to say that makes no sense.
Well, I'm going to go to Tom. Tom,
Thank
your
you.
question, please. And Peter, I love what you're saying. I wish I could have you talk for another hour. Tom?
Thank you. Appreciate everything and being part of this. My large question is, how do we maximize the collaboration between Rotary and the United Nations and everything we're doing? And I'd like to do a little building block to it. I came on one of these calls about a year ago, and I joined the USA. Got so excited about it. I went to Birmingham, Alabama. There was a peace conference, and I was part of bringing 35 Rotary Peace Fellows from around the world in for that conference. And there's one amazing woman in Australia doing master level classes on climate change. And there's an amazing fellow from Colonel Pashash from India. And then I called Barbara and I said, why don't we get these peace fellows and these Rotarians, and let's get you and the United Nations people all working together. Then she said, you got to learn about this climate restoration. So we're looking to want to demonstrate best practice programs that are going on with these Rotarians and Peace Fellows. We want to do something online in February. My final thing is, Mark Maloney was the former RI president that was on call when they adopted the environment to be the 7th area of focus. And I said, Mark, how about if we get something going when the time is right? Let's get involved and let's get some funding and do a project. So I wanted to let you know I'm all in. I'm going to work with Barbara, Shab, and others. We're talking about the Rotary Action for Peace sponsoring this online program. And I think we can bring a good part of the world together, about who's interested in this. So that's just an update. But the main question I have is, with all these people and all this talent, a lot of grandparents in Rotary, United Nations, and I think we could probably get some serious funding for a pilot also through global grants. I'll stop there and just love to have your comments about that.
That would be a cool answer, huh? Shab, I don't know if Shab's still here, but he's the global grant king. And if we could get a global grant to do something with Peter at the university at Santa Barbara, maybe then we could get the Rotaractors involved. Peter?
Yeah, so Tom, it's a perfect idea, perfect plan. It's a bit above my pay grade just because Rotary is complicated, UN Association is complicated. And would you be the point person for that and figure out how to do it?
Well, I'm on the planning team.
I don't know all the organizational.
I talked to Barbara about this about a year ago. I said, Tom, I don't have time to put it together. You put it together and I'll help support it and make the links when the time's right. So I'm on the planning group. So I will help put it together, the connecting the dots.
Yes.
And we'd like to ask to do a small feature with you. And then what I'm picturing is people can go on the website, and then what happens next, you might do just one featuring just climate restoration, and you might have a bigger audience. And again, I think there's some key players like Mark Maloney, who, are a former president, that can maybe get some funding too. So the goal would be to work with Barbara and the group and Rotary Action Group Peace, see if we can come up with a global grant. That would be a good start of the next year.
That would be good. Yeah, and finding surprising ways to expand the conversation. When you were sharing a second ago, Rotary Action for Peace, I thought that would be a very subversive way to get climate restoration into the language, right? Because anyone intuitively will say, oh, there's a connection between Rotary Action for Peace and climate restoration.
And it's one of the 7 areas of focus of Rotary, and it's the newest one, and they're looking for projects. Okay. Plus, it's part of the UN sustainability. So it's just, how do you build it? And there's a whole bunch of young people trying to figure out how do we get involved. Okay. And that's the organization that can help do it, in my opinion.
It's huge. But as I said, it's a bit above my pay grade at this point. So I'm going to work for you on that one.
Well, mine's volunteerism, so that's I'm pay grade now, but I'm happy to help.
I know, me too, actually.
And you'll see Peter's right over his shoulder. The book is called Climate Restoration, the Only Future That Will Sustain Our Planet. And, we're talking about climate restoration. It's a different story. It's not about zero carbon. It's not about carbon neutrality. The book points out that even though we may seem to be moving toward the UN climate goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050, it is not enough. We would still leave CO2 levels in the air more than 50% higher than humans have ever survived in the long term. No experts say that we can even have a decent chance of surviving if it's 50% higher. That's why I wanted Peter here. He's the only hopeful scientist that I have run into. And when you read the book, you'll then be able to realize that you can be part of the team that says climate restoration is what we want, climate restoration. And so with that, Peter, I thank you for bringing this information to the UNA-SOCAL division. It is recorded, and I'm going to put it on Peace Podcast. So if anybody here would like to see it again, invite your friends, invite your family to watch this. I will have my IT man edit this so we can put it up on peacepodcast.org and also on our website, unasocal.org, so that we can all have a conversation. It's a little hard to understand, but it's different, but it's not impossible. And the part that I like is when Peter mentioned that the whales, we were having no births. We were losing millions of whales. Did you know that? And then when they did that tiny little bit, when they had that tiny bit of iron sulfate, the whale population increased. The babies were born again. We just became a whale sanctuary in Santa Barbara, and we had Peter speak at the yacht club. Do you know in Santa Barbara we named all the whales? We can tell you by their tail fins what each whale's name is. And when they bring their babies to our channel and they swim next to the boats and we get to see them, this is nature at its best. And it only is going to happen when we all get on the climate restoration bandwagon with data. You cannot get on a bandwagon if you don't understand it, because you can confuse people. That's why I'm telling you, don't just do this because you want to. Do this because you know it will help us at this point. There's nothing else that I know. Mel, please.
Yeah, I don't want to rain on Peter's parade, but I was Googling the topic as he was speaking. There's a fair amount of controversy about this. And so I just encourage you to Google ocean iron fertilization and follow the links. There's not a simple or non-controversial answer here.
All my friends have been giving me every reason why it wouldn't work. And I have been.
I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm saying it may have complications that we're
Good clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, the atmospheric benefits would be quite good. There's quite a bit of concern about inside the ocean, under the surface, oxygen, acid, and the life cycles under the ocean and algae blooms that are in the previous experiments. People are trying to figure out what would this do at scale.
Right.
So it's an exciting potential.
Yeah, and Mel, as I said, uninformed people say, "Oh, at scale, you'll change the whole ocean," and no, they don't understand that when Mount Pinatubo gave us net zero, that was 1/1000th of the ocean area, and there were 0 reports of bad side effects. Obviously, there was a volcano, and a lot of people died in the volcano, but in terms of from the fact that the ocean was removing that much CO2. There's no data, and so it has been controversial. The controversy is dying down. The White House is talking about it now. There's a lot of university professors talking about it now again, first time in 11, 12 years, and the reason it's controversial is it defies the UN 1990 UN principle to eliminate human intervention in the climate. And that's the fundamental reason people object to it. All the objections about the harmful algal blooms, if you poke down, you say, is that even possible? The answer is no, it's not possible. But they bring up those objections to defend the UN language.
Well, you know, I have to agree with Mel too. Do your homework.
Yes.
This is presented to you as information. This is not presented to you as UNA is now going to come forth with climate restoration. That's why we bring these speakers. We bring speakers who are going to open up the channels of our brains, that we can choose how we want to report back to our chapters. But I want to thank you all for today. I want to thank all of you who showed up for the wonderful chapter reports. And I'd like to have Pat say something, please. Pat?
Yes, very quickly before we close, where are we at regarding the UN principle being changed and updated? That seems very critical here.
Are you talking about the, what principle are you referring to? Are you referring to the?
What I was referring to. Yeah.
Yes.
It's very exciting, Pat. I was hoping to not go to the COP meeting in Dubai, and I'm told that there will be some signing of a climate restoration resolution in Dubai.
That's great.
So probably not. My guess is it'll be next year.
Okay.
But I've got all the literature to go. Whoops, you can't see. All the literature.
Wonderful.
And
thank you.
We're getting there.
Thank you.
Yes.
You know, it's like anything else. It's information now. You're information full. So now you get to take that information and watch the video again and maybe read the book. The book is very inexpensive. I think I spent $9 on it or something. And when it came, I thought, you know, it was so easy to read. And the reason it was so easy to read is because he had Carol Douglas as his co-author, who is a teacher. So she put it in language that a teacher would use to teach a student something. So you can read the book and make your own conclusions. Now, with that, I am really delighted you're here today. We're all going to go to Barry's concert. We're all going to go to the Nixon Library and support Sylvia and meet each other in person, give each other a big hug. We're going to all help Tom Carlisi, and we're going to help all of us make the world a better place for us and our grandchildren. I have a list of all the meetings that are coming up. I want to welcome all the new board members who will be notified by Bianca. She will be sending letters to all of them that they have been elected, and we will give them a report on what meetings they need to attend. We only have 3 executive board meetings in the 2024, and happy Thanksgiving to you. I'm so thankful for all of you. Happy UN Day, which is, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is December 10th. I hope you will know that this is a big time. 75 years ago, Eleanor Roosevelt stood before the General Assembly, and there was a 100% support of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights remains as relevant today as it was that day in 1948. It was proclaimed and adopted by the UN General Assembly. The extraordinary vision and resolve of the drafters produced a document for the first time articulated the rights and freedoms which every human being is equally and inalienable alike. a right to. I read that to a bunch of kids in a juvenile hall. And they looked at me, Mrs. Gone, do you mean I have rights? And it was when I was a teacher. I said, you better believe you have rights. And I passed out this little book. I don't know if I have it here, but it's a little, oh, here it is. It's a little book. And it says, what are your human rights? Now, you don't worry about who published it. I didn't tell them to go to that church. I just said, read this. I gave everybody there a book. And I said, each of us are going to read one of the rights. We are all born free and equal. No torture, no slavery. All of these match the Sustainable Development Goals. And the human rights are as relevant today. In fact, it's been translated in more languages than the Bible. So what do you know about that? The human rights are here. So tell your chapter, bring it to your attention of the chapter. And last but not least, I want to tell you, why do I have this Ending War 101 behind me? My goal when I was a little girl, I told my mother, why when World War II ended, and I was just a kid in the 41 Ford, and I said, why is everybody honking their horn, Mom? Why are we all honking our horns? You know what she said? The war's over. Well, I was only 3 years old. I was born in 41, so I didn't know dink about the war. She said, we've suffered enough. My grandfather immigrated from Hungary to avoid World War I with $4 in his pocket. You know, I come from a history of war, no more, philosophers, parents, grandparents. And they all told me when at the dinner table, we didn't talk about TV. We talked about war no more. We talked about grandpa leaving Hungary. We talked about grandma living in poverty during the Depression. We talked about the real world. And so I was schooled in that. And then I meet Robert Mueller and I get to work at the highest level at the United Nations. And then I meet Mel and Judy and all of you berries. And I become chair of the United Nations Association, Southern California Division. And I get to invite great people to speak to us. And I'm so grateful. And with that, War No More. If you want to take the course, take a picture of me right now and get on the QR code. It's you join when you want. And with that, I thank you for being in my life. I cannot thank you enough for being so active and bringing your chapters to their full potential. And with that, is there a last word from anybody? Tom, you have a last word? Okay, Sylvia, a last word. I'm going to go around and give everybody a chance. Sylvia?
I was just wondering, as we listened to the speaker and learned all these things, how many of the people who are making the decisions for what we're going to do know any of this, you know, and how do we get it to them?
And Sylvia knows what she's talking about. She got us into Rotary, even if she had to be the ex Duarte Club. David Tuckman, you have a last word?
Yeah, we had an amazing speaker today. Peter, thank you for presenting today on climate restoration. We have an amazing set of chapters and leaders within UNA and in Rotary. I'm happy about our partnership between both our organizations. Looking forward to a wonderful rest of the year 2023 and a great year ahead for 2024 as well. Before I conclude, let me also wish you all a very happy upcoming Thanksgiving as well.
All right. Mel, last word? Judith Harris, last word?
Thank you all. Barbara, thank you for your leadership, and Happy New Year to everybody. Happy and healthy New Year.
Peter FIEKOWSKY, you have a last word?
Oh, just happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Share about restoring the climate. Mel, thank you for bringing up the skepticism and the controversy. That isn't. I should have said more about that.
And
Barbara, if I can, I'd like to just thank you for hosting this, number one. And second, this is my first time at a UNA-USA meeting as a guest. And I want to tell you, I'm so inspired. And I want to tell you, your chapter to me, your group is the beacon of light. I think that's going to emanate through the world. So
did you hear that? You're all the beacon of life. Oh, thank you, Tom. You come every time. I'm going to send you our list of meetings. We sure like your red shirt and we sure like your attitude. So
Ohio State football game is on right now.
Barry, how was it all from your concert?
Yes. Well, it's a great meeting. Thank you very much, Barbara, and congratulations to the new officers and you know, great presentation from Peter. I appreciate it. And I'm glad we'll be part of spreading the word and at least getting ourselves more educated about the possibility of that approach. Thursday, I was interviewing Chief Ojima in northern Alberta, in northern Edmonton, in a town called Jasper, and had an opportunity for a conversation about the First Nation or Native American Indian cultures as being represented in this concert coming up on Wednesday night. So I'll end just by wishing you, and I will probably not pronounce this correctly, but I'll wish you Kiziwatsuin and Kadik Diwin. Peace and love.
Oh, peace and love. I love it. Pat, do you have a last word?
I just want to thank everyone for wishing the planet well. And Peter, thank you for introducing me to this book. What I believe I'll do is give it as a holiday gift to my loved ones. Thank you.
Wonderful idea. I see Penny there, but Penny, I think you have a man there, and I don't know. Tell the man with the pretty face to tell us something for the last word.
My name's Paul. I'm married to Penny. Penny's a peace artist. And she's got
Thank you too for
work around different funders. Peace for our children is a wonderful lithograph of peace.
And with
PhD physicist, and I'm just so enthralled with what Peter's brought forward. This is the first time I've ever heard of the possibility of ending the train wreck in service.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It's a wonderful meeting.
Great. All right. Now I'm going to, again, bless all of you for joining us, and thank you for this 2 hours. It's been inspirational, and I'm inspired. Bianca, are you on still?
I'm here, yes.
Bianca, what's your last word today? You're going to be our last person.
Okay. Thank you everybody for being on. Thank you so much for hosting, and thank you, Peter, for your insight, and thank you all too for doing the amazing work that each of you do, even if you're maybe not part of a chapter, and like visiting, like I know Tom, you mentioned you're visiting us, so thank you so much too for everyone that's doing their contributions. Even if it's a small one, it makes a big difference. And with that, just hopefully everyone has a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving, Christmas. Shop small if possible. I know it's interesting how our economy is right now, but and definitely support and to give to those in need, and wishing you and your families all the best too. And oh boy, like Judith mentioned, have a healthy and safe new year as well when we enter 2024. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bianca. You are just a president-elect in training. I'm sure you're doing a great job.
Thanks, Barbara.
With that, I'm going to thank you. I am going to ask you if you'd like to save the chat, go to the chat button and then take those 3 little dots and click on it and save the chat, because there's going to be a lot you're going to want to click on when you get it. And then I'm going to invite you to watch this. I'll let you know when, and I'll give you a Google Doc of all of the meetings coming up and the dates. And so with that, I think the business meeting went very well today. I appreciate the wonderful reports, those who gave them. And if you know somebody who wants to be a UNA member, it's a deal. Let me tell you, $50 a year to be a member of an association that's working directly with the United Nations through our regional reps. So thank you, and join, and be sure you have a safe holiday season, and join us again for the next meeting, which is coming up February 5th for the annual. It's called the, January 20th is another open general board meeting, January 20th. So we're moving right on through, and the first executive board meeting is February the 5th. Now you won't know that, but I'm going to send you a Google Doc so you don't have to write it down, and you can join us on any of those meetings. Okay, my friends, God bless you, and happy holidays. For you guys who are listening to the recording, go to UNA USA and learn about advocacy. And then also go to UNA-SOCAL.org and find your chapter that you want to join. Bye-bye.